Okay. So I was saying, okay, so I wanted to start today borrowing this idea from Alan Watts. Do you do it or does it do you? And I think you'll see how this will develop into the theme for today. Um, I really wanted to explore something today, very clear. Does do you do it or does it do you? So what does this mean? We have this feeling that we are doing our lives. We are doing all sorts of things. We are getting up in the morning, we are going to work or not, or we are making breakfast, we are making plans, we are going shopping for Christmas and planning for the new year. We are doing all these things. We are feeling ourselves to be this agent that is executing all these kind of tasks. We are the doers, we are doing it. We are clearly doing it, Just do it, and we are doing it. But are we? So that's the beginning of this question. Do you do it or does it do you? And this is quite profound, in fact. And when we really explore this really deep, it really turns our world upside down. It really turns our view completely upside down, in fact. Because in reality, this view of I am doing it is based on the most complicated and the most troublesome and controversial topic, which is cause and effect. Cause and effect. So today I chose the theme of contemplation, healing, and the ultimate space. Now, what does this has to do with any of it? And we will get there. We will get there. The main topic here really is cause and effect. Cause and effect. Of course, as most people that have been raised, quotes, within the orthodox Buddhist framework, it has been pounded into your heads again and again the absolute truth of cause and effect. And in fact, it's so much so that, this kind of teaching has been controversial and extremely difficult from the beginning. And it's still today. And yet we need to tackle it. We really need to face this. So I also invite you today that you bring out any questions or any challenges, any doubts that anything I say may bring. Because this is very important. Do you do it or does it do you? You see, the whole notion of cause and effect, it is based upon the idea that one, I do it, I do things, I do events, and these events in turn will have results. And it is also based upon the idea that there is a world out there where events are happening. There are discrete events that are happening somewhere out there, and those events have results. So it's not just me doing it. There's a bunch of other people doing it, and there's a bunch of other stuff doing it. Even trees are doing it. When they drop their seeds into the ground, and the tree drops the seed, and the seed grows. Everybody's doing it. Everything is doing it. Even the wind is doing it. The wind is blowing, and the wind just blew half my roof off. In a storm like this, we say like this. Everybody's doing it, and this view is the underpinning of the notion of cause and effect. And this is why And the fact that this is really not really true, that is why, people like Garab Dorje, for example, when he started to teach Dzogchen, they tried to kill him, It's like the first thing that happened after Garab Dorje came down from the mountain and started to teach Dzogchen, and immediately, the king sent people to kill him. And after they failed, the Nalanda monastery sent Manjushri Mitra to debate this evil teacher, which of course Manjushri Mitra ended up becoming a student of Garab Dorje. But anyway, if we look throughout the history of Dzogchen, we will observe that this topic has always placed the Dzogchen teachings under attack, continuously, in fact, even today. The reason why today Dzogchen is not so much under attack is because it's become the real essence of Dzogchen has been buried under layers of gradualist orthodox views, safely tucked away into the general gradualistic, tantric Buddhism. And anyone that dares to speak pure Dzogchen is immediately, stamped down. So we must see that there's a reason for this. Now I want to really explore this topic in greater detail today. Do you do it or does it do you? Of course, from an ordinary experience point of view, it feels to us that things are being done and things have results. And anyone would be foolish to deny that. Myself, I teach like this. You've all been to my teachings many times, and you all have heard me say again and again that when moving from the point of view of the dream experience, of the dualistic dream experience, then of course cause and effect functions. And we live in this world that seems ruled by cause and effect, and we must respect that. But just because we must respect that doesn't mean we have to believe it. And this is the crux of the teaching today. Just because we are living in a dream world, illusory situation, and of course we must pay respect to that, because we don't really have a choice at this point, it doesn't mean we have to believe it, and to keep believing it, and to keep defending it, or else we never get out. And that's the real problem. Any kind of spiritual teaching that strongly defends the ultimate truth of such principles will never lead you to liberation. Never. We see the world as these events happening out there. My actions as events, as discrete events that are causing results. However, this continuity, this feeling of continuity, it is completely illusory, because all this functioning of I do it, others do it. It is based on this idea, on this perception of discrete. It's very confused. It is based on one hand, on discrete events, discrete autonomous events, and these events are part of a continuum, of a continuity that has connections to each other, that makes links, causal links. If we have a picture, like a picture movie, like in the old days. Today everything is digital, even though the principle is the same, but it is easier with the old example. In the old film, you have these photographs, very, snapshots, and then the film is passed and you see each picture. When you're looking at the movie, it looks like there's a sequence, a movement, a flow, a continuity. Or just like children play with the books, you make some pictures on the side of the book, and then as you flip the pages very quickly, it looks like the little man is moving, Same principle. That's what's happening, in a way. We have this notion of discrete events causing continuity. Out there, for real, you know? And I'm speaking like this now, sort of bypassing a lot of things, because most of you here already received a lot of teachings. Enough to know, to understand that this idea of discrete events happening for real out there is complete fantasy, you know. And however, the whole notion of cause and effect is dependent upon the existence of real events out there that are really happening in sequence, a real sequence that is truly manifesting in the past, in the present, in the future. And furthermore, so this idea of causality implies time, implies that, you know, there was an event in the past that causes a result in the future. We have to make up our minds, you know. What is our view? What is our view? One of the greatest obstacles to really understanding Dzogchen, not just Dzogchen, any kind of non-dual, Gnostic kind of spiritual tradition, can only be understood, practiced, applied, if we tackle this issue directly. And this doesn't really happen these days, at least not in the Buddhist context. And this is one of the reasons why, in my view, most Dzogchen that is taught today is extremely confused. It's very difficult. Because it is mixed, it is confused. It is not, you know, it's not one thing, it's not another, you know. It's not the gradualist path, it's not the instantaneous, sudden path, non-causal path of Dzogchen. It's neither. It's something, sometimes is one thing, sometimes is another. And this becomes very confusing for people. We must resolve the root right there. Yes, in a dualistic perspective, when we are suffering under the veil of delusion of karma, we are experiencing a karmic vision. That's how we speak in Dzogchen, right? We are experiencing a karmic vision of reality. And in this karmic vision, we experience the world in this way. Subject, object, yesterday, now, tomorrow, my past life, my future life, cause and effect, causality, and so on. That's called the karmic vision, and it's experienced like this. Completely true. However, the fundamental point is that all that is illusory. It's not real. It's not real. If this is not clearly cut down from the start, we don't know what Dzogchen is. We don't even know how to approach the path. We develop very strange ideas about path and about what the path is and about what leads to awakening. Nothing can lead to awakening, because awakening is not a goal. It is not a result of a cause. See, there we go. Do you do it or does it do you? We think we do it. We think we do the spiritual path. We think we walk the path. We practice the path to attain a result. However, if we have the faintest understanding of Dzogchen, not just Dzogchen, of actually the root of the Buddhist teachings, of the Prajnaparamita teachings, of Madhyamika, Yogacara, and so on, if we have any understanding of the Buddhist teachings, it's very clear, not just in Dzogchen, in fact, but the root of the heart of the Buddhist teachings, it is very clear that that's all fantasy. That's all fantasy. This is a very difficult topic, and however, today I want to continue to really go down this rabbit hole completely, because my hope is that maybe you get to this understanding that even though we experience reality in this way, because of the delusion, we need to develop a conviction that, yeah, but this is fantasy. Because that's the only way to really break, kind of, to loosen up this mind, to make some space inside ourselves, some real space, genuine space, not fabricated. Or else we are always struggling, you see, we're always struggling. We are exposed from left and right through all these kind of teachings about how we have to develop this, develop that, grow in this way, grow in that way. That's what Yudra Ningpo was saying about the immature teachings of cause and effect. These are immature teachings, these are childish teachings. It may function for a while for beginners that are just starting out on the path, or people that have somehow perhaps, a level of spiritual maturity that is still, quite at the beginning stages, to help them kind of going on, and that's fine. But at some point it has to be dropped, because it is very childish. It is a very childish view. It is a creationist view of a world that is being always created. The Christians believe that there is an entity, God, that created everything, and Buddhists believe that they are creating it, that they are God. It is their karma that is creating the world. It's even worse, in a sense. At least the Christians believe in some bigger creature called God. Most ordinary Buddhists make themselves into the God. I am creating the world. My karma is creating the world. And the collective karma of all of us is creating the universe. We are the God. Because this is a creationist view. You can change the creator, but you don't change the view. Are you doing it, or does it do you? What does it mean, does it do you? Can we separate? Because see, this is the point of view of duality, of an agent doing things. And in that way, we miss the obvious observation that actually things are just manifesting. There's no one doing anything at all. The tree does not drop the seed. We say, the tree drops the seed. And we can say that just a way of speaking, but no, that's how we see it, actually. The tree drops the seed. We may not put a conscious label of deliberation on part of the tree, but subconsciously there is that notion there that the tree drops the seed. And however, the seed just dropped from the tree. Are you doing things, or are things just happening? And then later you are attributing it to yourself. You are an imposter. You are an imposter of your own actions. The actions are happening, and then later the ego comes and takes credit for the action, as I have done that. Which one is it? In reality, the whole world, the whole manifestation of what is happening, it is an inconceivable, abstract network of, you can say, patterns, if you will. A pattern is not a thing. If we look at, for example, if we examine, what is the difference between wood and metal? What is the difference between wood and metal? A scientist would go and look inside and try to find, what makes wood wood and what makes metal metal. And if we look deep inside, we don't find wood and we don't find metal. We find different patterns. Different patterns of the same. Different patterns of the same nothing, There is a patterning in effect, a patterning in manifestation. And that's you. You are a pattern in manifestation. You think you are doing your life, but your life is doing you. Yeah? You think you're doing your life, but it's the other way around. Your life is doing you. Everything that is happening, every moment to moment, is being taken over by this deluded mind, by this ego self-centered mind that takes ownership of the events, drinks them, eats them up as mine, and it becomes bigger and bigger. It's being fed by that and taking ownership of that. So in fact, what is happening to you is making you. You are not doing it, it's doing you. You're being done. You're being done by the universe. You're being done by the absolute, moment to moment. It is exactly the opposite to what is ordinary experience. Every moment of experience, every moment of presence, of experience, of manifestation, when we see it for what it is, when we see it through the vision of wisdom, of awareness, of pure presence, then it becomes apparent for what it is. Just thisness. An inconceivable manifestation of, we can say, this inconceivable patterning of arisal, beyond time, beyond space. But when it's not seen for what it is, it becomes me. And we have this vision of me separate from the rest. And we say, I do, but how is that possible? There is no you separate from anything else. What can you do? Everything is inseparable. Not just metaphysically, but in reality. You know, I mean, we can even understand just... I'm trying to keep this explanation right now in a more kind of, practical language, not so much kind of Buddhist philosophy, deliberately. Just to show that this is not just Buddhist philosophy, it is actually the way, when we investigate, when we really observe, it's really like this. You see, this notion of separation, because in order to have cause and effect, also, we have to have separate things. Events and things that then have a causal link between them. That, or else it wouldn't make any sense to speak of cause and effect. Because if everything is inseparable, then the cause and the effect would be inseparable. And then it becomes a redundant point. Which is exactly what Nagarjuna explained. But I'm not inventing this, Of course, this is the hard teachings of Dzogchen, but not just. If you study the teachings of Nagarjuna, for example, right there. So it's not even Dzogchen only. Nagarjuna very clearly explains that even cause and effect are empty, doesn't exist. Exactly because of what I was just saying. Because the moment you realize, you see that things are not really separate from each other, then all the bases for cause and effect disappear. If there's not two things, how can there be a causal link between two things that don't exist? I am doing the world. However, even from an ordinary point of view, we have this feeling of separation because we feel that there's space. We feel that there's limits. I'm sitting inside this house. This is a very interesting experience to actually have. You can do that by yourself. It's not so difficult. Like something as simple as the feeling of being inside your house. When we are inside our house, you feel you are isolated from the world to an extent. There's the walls around you, and you say, this is my house. And if you observe your mind, if you observe your experience really closely, you will notice that you have this very concrete feeling of being isolated, protected. Yeah, that's why we like to be at home. It's safe. It's safe. I'm safe in my house. We go inside, we close, we lock the door, and now I'm safe. I have this protective. I'm somehow shielded from the world. I'm in this cocoon, separate from all the crazy world out there and all the danger and all the stuff. Just look at your mind, the feeling that these walls produce in your mind. Because that is very close to what is generally happening all the time about everything. However, you can also have this experience of sitting in your house and noticing that, and then just expanding your mind and realizing that you are not outside of the world, not at all. These walls mean really nothing. You are still just this little dot in this vast universe. These walls are really meaningless. You are still here. Walls or no walls makes no difference. Makes no difference at all. Maybe they protect you from the wind and the rain, but that's about it. The rest is just this mind that creates these barriers between things, this separation between things. This is the way it is perceived. This is the real problem of subject and object. It is this feeling of separation, which lies at the root of cause and effect. Without subject and object, there is no cause and effect. And the Buddha taught there is no subject and object. So yes, of course, we can spend a lot of time. We can spend a lot of time with the relative teachings of cause and effect, which I call dream language, because the relative teachings of cause and effect are dream language, are the way that people in the dream talk to each other, using the language of the dream experience. And to a certain point, that maybe it's useful, but only very limited. At some point, we need to start pointing directly to the truth beyond the dream. So this question of do you do it or does it do you is something to reflect, is something to really ponder. It can almost be like a koan, in fact, something to really, really reflect within ourselves, to identify this notion, this feeling of doing things, versus actually things are happening and it feels like I'm being built by them. The way the world is manifesting is building me, is constructing me, is defining who I am to myself. Only later something within my mind is taking ownership of the event and saying, I have done that. I am the doer. I am the cause of all this. Things are very simple, really. It's very simple. Sometimes we can talk a lot about very kind of complex, it seems like there's like these very complex philosophical kind of ideas. But that's only because it is so difficult to express and to break down this delusion. Sometimes we have to make the mind confused with all kinds of weird philosophies. So the mind relaxes a little bit, becomes a bit more open, and sees the mistake that it's doing. It's not about understanding anything. All these kind of teachings is not about understanding anything. It's about making cracks, making holes in this mind, in this conceptual mind. It is to help us understand, at least to get a feel that something is off. We really need this, actually. All these teachings only serve this purpose, to make us kind of have this feeling that something is wrong. Maybe you don't know yet what is wrong, but you start to get a clear feeling that something is wrong, in the sense that my experience of reality is one, and yet when it's investigated, when it's observed carefully, there's a lot of inconsistencies. It's like this detective story, like this. There's this crime, and this detective goes to investigate, and the people involved, they have this fantastic story, a very good story. When they tell the story, it sounds very good. It sounds very convincing. They have a really good story of how things happened. And yet, when the detective starts to investigate the story, it notices some discrepancies. It notices something doesn't add up. It doesn't know yet what happened, but it starts to get this clear feeling, no, something is not right. There's something that doesn't fit. It's the glitch in the story. And it's the glitch in the story that puts this mind into a state of openness, into a state of really kind of having a power to inquire, to really inquire, to really investigate fully. Because unless we have this clear feeling of the glitch in the story, we don't really have the right attitude. We don't really have the right power, the right motivation, the right inclination to investigate. So the glitch is very important. So all these kind of teachings, like I'm doing today, and I do many times, is to really give you all these kind of clues, about why the story of ordinary experience is full of holes. It's a bad story. It has no alibi. The alibi does not hold. It does not hold. Not really. At surface, if we just look superficially at it, it looks very convincing. But once you start to dig, it's full of inconsistencies. So this is a very good point to start as well, to do that. Do you do it, or does it do you? And not only is very important, it really goes at the heart. Because once you really investigate this, it will break really a lot of the essential aspects of this delusion, which is the doer, separate from the world. The moment that falls down, then there's no doer, there's no world. Because there is no doer and there is no world, I am sorry to give you this bad news. For many people, this is terrible news to tell you that there is no doer and that there is no world. And for others, it's great news. It's fantastic. Because then a lot of burden falls down from our shoulders. This burden of having control of our lives. This burden of having to do something of our lives. This burden of having to save the world. This burden of having to worry about our future. There is no future. There is no world. So don't worry. This is the teaching of the Buddha. It has been since the beginning. It's in the sutras. It's in the commentaries. Even though it has been masked and hijacked by many people over the centuries for political reasons, because it's not a teaching that interests to the kings. Because of course the kings did not want this kind of teaching, because you don't want to rule a people that don't believe in tomorrow, because it's very difficult. It's very difficult to build a country. It's very difficult to build a nation, an empire, if most of your people don't believe in tomorrow. It's very complicated. It makes sense. I mean, if you're the king, you want your people to have a religion that, if you're genuine, that is wise and brings peace and compassion, but at the same time, that allows you to have a kingdom that flourishes, and Dzogchen is not that. Dzogchen is not that. Dzogchen would abolish all kingdoms, all kings and all rulers. Because of this understanding of the nature of things. Once you start to understand that cause and effect themselves are relative and are only part of the dream, then you stop focusing on that, you see. You understand that while you are dreaming, you must function like this, but it no longer carries the same weight. It no longer carries the same importance anymore. And you're trying to see beyond. You're trying to see beyond the dream. It is like a prisoner. A prisoner lives in the prison. And the prisoner knows that outside of the prison there is a world. Free world. But while the prisoner is inside the prison, it has to follow the rules of the prison. If not, the guards come and beat them down or whatever. Doesn't get food. So inside the prisoner follows the rules of the prison. However, the prisoner knows that those rules only apply to the prison. They are not absolute. Outside the prison there's a whole world, free, where such rules don't exist. If we keep our noses down, focused on the dream world, if we keep our vision narrowly constricted by teachings of causality, it will be very difficult for us to be free. That is one of the reasons why, for example, I'm now teaching all these Dzogchen tantras, because those tantras are uncompromising. They are pure. They have not been corrupted. They're pure teachings. And it's important for you to really read those texts, to know, to learn, to get teachings on those texts, to allow your mind to see beyond the dream. You see, I'm running out of focus for some reason. To see beyond the dream. If our view is not beyond the dream, how can we be free? How can we ever hope to be free? The other aspect of this is, I think I said this in a teaching at some point. What is enlightenment? Because we are approaching the spiritual path with this goal-oriented mind. Because of course we believe in cause and effect. So even though we may say we are Dzogchen practitioners and we are learning Dzogchen, but we still believe in cause and effect. So we try not to, maybe, but we do. So we still have this goal-driven mentality. So what is this enlightenment that we are searching for? What is this awakening that we are searching for? Where are you going? I think I said this one time before. Enlightenment, awakening, is what is. Once all the delusion, all the confusion, all the dualistic vision, subject and object, all the obscuration, once all that is confused and untrue, once all that is dissolved, whatever is left is awakening. Again, I'm not inventing anything here. This is all in the sutras, not even Dzogchen. This is just basic Buddhism. I'm just calling it out to you. in a way that is not heard very often anymore these days. Whatever is left after all the obscurations, I'm going to speak now Mahayana. So after the cognitive obscurations, emotional obscurations are removed, whatever is left is Buddha. Right? I mean, that's basic Mahayana. Not even Dzogchen, just Mahayana. Whatever is left after all the obscurations are removed is enlightenment. So, enlightenment is what is. Okay? Enlightenment is what is. And as it says also in the Mahayana Sutras, all these obscurations are not existing. They're not real. They're illusory. I think the word that is very commonly found is adventitious. Adventitious obscurations. Adventitious means temporary, ephemeral, not solid, not substantial, unreal. So the obscurations themselves are unreal. And once these unreal obscurations are dissolved, whatever is left, that's enlightenment. Now let's use our brains a little bit, because they're not totally useless. They have some good functions we have to understand. So if whatever it is enlightenment, enlightenment is not a result of anything. Enlightenment is what is already. How can that be the result of anything? How can that be what happens as a result of anything? It's just what is already. You cannot get to where you are. To think of a cause and effect way to reach enlightenment, it's like thinking like I have to stand up and walk and come back to be where I am already. This is senseless. The path of awakening, if we speak of a path, okay, because we can speak of a path of awakening, but not in the way it's usually understood by the more gradualist kind of mind. When we speak of a path, even from the point of view of Dzogchen, for example, or any kind of, wisdom-based schools, a path is not the result of actions. A path is not the result of events. A path is wisdom. Wisdom is the path. Wisdom is the path, you see? Because it is through wisdom that we come to see beyond the veil, see beyond the obscuration. Or, if we want to use more path language, is the way we dissolve the obscurations, the illusory obscurations, to see what is already now. Any ideas of enlightenment as a goal to be attained is opposite direction to freedom. It is ignorance. Because it is based on the principle of cause and effect, and it places enlightenment as the result of causes. So, going back to the original question where I started today, do you do it or does it do you in terms of enlightenment? Do you do enlightenment? Do you do the path to enlightenment? Or is enlightenment doing you? You see, enlightenment doing you is a very interesting point. Because that's in accordance to truth, in fact. And that's explained in, for example, in a lot of the Tathagata Garbha texts, a lot of the Buddha nature texts explain it like that. They say, in a kind of funny, paradoxical way, these texts say something like, the cause, very, very funny, the cause for your awakening, they say, it's your Buddha nature. Like, for example, you find that in a lot of the teachings from Asanga, for example, in Buddha nature. He says like this: the cause for your enlightenment is your Buddha nature. This is very interesting. This is exactly what I said. It's doing you. It's doing you. You think you are doing the path to enlightenment, but it's the other way around. It's doing you. But of course, when we say your own Buddha nature is the cause for your enlightenment, at a superficial level, we could understand, okay, so there's a cause. But no, this is just a trick. It's a trick. Because your Buddha nature is what is already. How can it be a cause for something else to happen, different from itself? It is the same thing as saying that it is the cause. It is the cause for itself. It's self-caused, you know, which is exactly the point that I made in the beginning. That the moment you break this duality, there is no longer two, so you cannot have cause and effect anymore. It is self-caused. The Buddha nature itself is the cause for your enlightenment. It's doing you right now, in fact. We have a lot of difficulty in letting go of this I. That is why in contemplation, that's why contemplation is so important, you see. When we sit in contemplation, we must drop everything. We drop I, we drop thinking, we drop yesterday, tomorrow, even now we must drop. This is very important, I think. We hear a lot of teachings, about now. Even sometimes, Dzogchen teachers use this now principle. And I also do sometimes, as a kind of a way to approach. But this is just skillful means. It's temporary. Even the now has to go away. For genuine contemplation, even the principle of being in the now has to disappear. Because there is no now. I actually explored this quite a bit in a deconstructive way. I explored this, how to reach to this experience of this timelessness, because this is very important. I actually explored this a little bit in my book. I do kind of a gradual, step-by-step opening up of the meaning of now, because this is very important. Because the meaning of now, you see, is based on something fixed. There's before moment, there's after moment, and what is in between the before moment and the after moment is now. I mean, come on. How much more fairy tales can we tell? I mean, it's enough fairy tales. When are our minds satisfied with stories? Do you still want stories, or do you want to find the truth? I'm very serious now. Do you want to keep with stories, or do you want to find the truth? What do you want? I mean, I can give you stories, but why? If we have this idea of now is this fixed point. It's a fixed point in time. But there is no such thing. It is like trying to take a snapshot and holding on to that. It's trying to hold on to the present. Hold on to the hold on to the present moment. I just find it very funny. Because it's completely ridiculous teaching. I do it myself sometimes, because I know sometimes people need to hear more soft approach. But today I didn't want to do that. Today is the last teaching of the year. So I thought I'm going to go with a bang. Just go straight on, I'm holding on to the present. Just hold on to the present. Just hold on. Don't let go. No, please, let go. Let go completely. Let go of the present moment completely. Let go of the past moment. Let go of the future moment. let go of the present moment. Stay in presence. No, don't stay in presence. Just stay. Just stay. Just stay. There's no need to stay in any particular way. Of course, we sometimes use these kind of words as kind of, some kind of a method, some kind of a skillful way to try to approach the mind when the mind is in a very engrossed state in confusion. So we have to use some kind of dream language. So in a way, what I'm saying today to you is kind of more direct teaching, more ultimate teaching. Super essential, ultimate essence, secret. Don't stay anywhere. There is nowhere to be. Where are you going to stay? Stay in this way, stay in that way, stay present, stay in the now. It's all nonsense. Just stay. Once you just stay without trying to contrive, without trying to construct anything, without trying to fabricate anything, without trying to force anything, then eventually you'll reach a point of naturalness. Naturalness, you understand? Natural. Natural means not constructed. Because everything else is constructed. If you are trying to stay in the now, if you're trying to stay present, if you're trying to focus on something, if you're trying to visualize a deity or whatever it is, this is all constructed. This is all fantasy, in fact. It's never moving from this doing. Stop doing, let it do you. Let it do you, because that's actually what's happening. And while we are feeling that we are doing, we are just trying to swim against the tide, we're just swimming against the current. Let it do you. Just stay. The manifestation of what is occurring is spontaneous. It is ever present. You can never stay in the now because there is no now. Movement, you see, movement. It is ever changing. It is ever changing. Just being, simply being. Just staying. Without any other words after it. Any words that we put after staying is unnecessary. Just stay. Even that is unnecessary. So if we're gonna go all the way to the real main point, the really direct, then let's go all the way. Let's not hold back today at all. Even saying just stay, even that's too much. Why? Because you don't have a choice. Where would you go? How can you not stay? Look at your own mind, look at your own experience. Awareness is ever present. Awareness is ever present. Once we stop focusing, fixating on the manifestation of appearance as real, and just allow things to be as they are, then even staying is unnecessary because you are never gone. I mean, where could you go outside of this experience of the moment? The experience of the moment, momentarily, moment to moment. Even moment to moment is saying too much. This mind is taking these snapshots of things and making this film like consistently. And we are not seeing that all these discrete events are themselves just little blips emerging into the substratum, into the basis, the unconstructed basis that is the ultimate mind itself. And all we have to do is just be. In fact, there's really nothing to say. The right teaching is just silence itself. The reason why this is so difficult is because the mind... How do I explain this? The reason why this is so difficult is because, you see, ordinary way, just as an example, this dualistic mind always focuses on the foreground. How many times do you look at a photograph or a painting and you notice the background of the painting without deliberation? Never happens, isn't it? The mind, the eyes and the mind automatically focus on the foreground. When you look at the painting of Mona Lisa, what you see is the lady, the face. And then you start to remember, I wonder, they say that that's Da Vinci, I wonder if that's really true. How many times have you actually looked at the background of Mona Lisa? Maybe if you're an artist, maybe if you're a painter, then you look because you have a different perspective. If you're a painter, then you are familiar with backgrounds because you have to paint them. So backgrounds become something very real for you, quotes. They are relevant. However, if you are not, for most people, you don't notice the background. Maybe there is a little pig dancing behind Mona Lisa and you never noticed. Just go look. After this webcast, go look. I don't know, I'm just joking, but the background, you see, the background. We look at the world only from a foreground point of view. That is, we see the elements that are sticking out, but we don't see the background. This is just ordinary way. So in the same way, at a deeper level, what we call the basis, you see, because in Dzogchen we speak about the basis, right? The alaya, the ground. Well, the ground is the background. It's the same principle. It is the background of what? It is the background of reality. When you look at a painting, you see Mona Lisa there. That's the foreground. That's what we call reality. And then there's the basis. There's the background. And there's more than there's the canvas itself. The canvas where the painting is painted on. We also don't pay attention to that. We don't even notice it. That's the basis. And because we don't distinguish these things, we start to believe very much in the existence of the foreground things. It is the same thing for music, for example. Musicians, I'm not a musician, so for me, I'm a little bit tone deaf. So I understand this very well from one side. People that are musicians and that have a very good ear, they will understand this even deeper than what I understand myself in relation to music, because you'll have it experientially. Musicians, especially very good musicians, for them, silence is very important. because it is silent. Because silence, you see, silence is as important in music than sound. You could not have music without silence. Silence is what makes the space in between the notes. Silence is what defines the notes. Silence is what defines melody, rhythm. Without silence, there's no music. In a way, we could say that silence is the background in the music. And the background is as important, or is crucially important, is as important as the foreground in defining a piece. Just like the background in a painting is as important as the foreground. Even though we don't notice it, unless we are trained to, we don't notice the background. But it makes a complete difference. It is the theme, it is the feeling, what arises depends on the background. Professional musicians hear the silence. People that are not really professional musicians or don't have a very good ear, they only hear the melody. Never noticing that the silences are actually what is making the melody, as much as the sounds. So this background, you see, this background, that's what we call mind's nature, the nature of the mind, the ultimate nature of the mind. It is the background, it is the silence. Sometimes in the Dzogchen teachings, they use the word the sky, space. Sometimes I use the word silence. These are just pointers, just metaphors. Because we need to be trained to look at it. Just like a musician is trained to learn about silence. Just like a painter is very much aware of backgrounds and is trained to learn about the background. Just like a photographer also is trained to pay attention to the background in the photo. As Dzogchen practitioners, as spiritual practitioners, our background is the nature of the mind, is the ground of reality. And if we don't really learn, discover what that is, how to recognize that, then we are ever lost in the Mona Lisa, in the foreground. We miss the silence. And in that case, we don't understand. We keep believing in cause and effect, yesterday, today, tomorrow, myself, other people. Not recognizing the simplicity of things. Things are very simple, you see. Sometimes these philosophies can look very complicated, but it's because the mind is complicated. It's not. It's actually quite simple. It's literally just this. It's literally just this. This tendency of the mind, you see, to make all these kind of complications, it is exactly because we don't see the background. And if we don't see the background, we develop all kinds of beliefs about the foreground. That makes it even very difficult to accept these kind of teachings. We become very judgmental. We start to judge all the things that appear. And that further reinforces our belief in their existence, you see. Like for example, if we look, we just don't understand that there's orders of things, you see. And the greatest order of things is the background. It is like a cat and a mouse. A cat and a mouse. If we look at the world from the point of view of the cat and the mouse, if we put ourselves in their order, in their level of order of reality, then we find ourselves in a dimension where there's great strife. The mouse is very scared of the cat, scared for his life, because if the cat catches the mouse, it's going to kill it and eat it. So the mouse is always in stress, always hiding in the corners and always running very fast, always super attentive, seeing, if there's a cat around. From the cat's point of view, the cat is always very attentive. Where is the mouse? I need to eat, or else I'm going to starve. I need food. I need to catch that mouse. That's the level of order of things at their level. From the point of view of someone observing this from the outside, maybe they observe this. They observe the cat chasing the mouse, and they see all this event playing out, all this chase and running, and maybe at some point the cat almost catches the mouse, and the observer looking at this scene at some point starts to take a position of judgment. Maybe they take a side, depending on their inclination. Some people will feel, oh, poor mouse, and they feel very sorry for the mouse, because they're afraid the cat will catch the mouse and kill the mouse, and they feel compassion for the mouse, and they feel very sorry for the mouse, and they're suffering for the mouse. Other people don't like mice, and they get a cat on purpose so that the cat can kill the mice, and they are hoping that the cat catches the mouse. Whatever it is, people take a position. They take a side in this battle, and they perceive it as a battle, as a conflict. They perceive it as a struggle. It is a struggle for life and death. A terrible tragedy of life and death. It is the tragedy of samsara, Buddhists will say. The tragedy of samsara. And that's another order. That's another level of observation. However, if we go one level higher of observation, we understand that it's no conflict at all. There's no... See, at the level of the mouse and the cat, we see hope and fear. The fear of the mouse, the hope of the cat. At the level of the observer of a higher order, we see perhaps the feeling of the idea of drama and conflict, strife, suffering. From a higher order, well, if we would feed all the cats vegetarian food and leave all the mice alone, then at some point we would have a plague and the whole city is full of mice. And then we say we have a problem, we have a mouse problem. On the other hand, if the cats get out of control, they don't die of natural causes, they just breed as much as they want, then we have Greece, Crete, maybe not everybody understands the joke. We have just cats everywhere. We have an invasion of cats. That's disorder. That's disorder. So in reality, from a higher perspective, the dynamic of the cat and the mouse is actually harmony. It is harmony. What is the point I'm trying to make here? The point I'm trying to make here is that everything is relative. Everything is relative. And your vision of things depends on which level of order you're sitting. If you're sitting on the level of order of the cat of the mouse, if you're sitting on the level of order of the observer, or if you're sitting on the level of order of a higher reality, then your perspective changes. But it's all just perspectives, you see. It is all just perspectives. This leads us to the next topic, which is order and disorder, which leads now to the point that I had in my teaching for today, which was healing. Because healing has to do with disorder, or healing has to do with order and disorder. The word healing has many meanings, of course. We can understand it at many different levels. However, I want to speak of healing today from the point of view of order and disorder. When there is order, there is sanity. There is sanity. There is health. Whatever you mean by health, it doesn't matter. When there is disorder, there is problem. There is tension. There is insanity. Just like in this just like in this example I just gave of the cat and the mouse, where if we take sides, maybe we feel sorry for the cat, for the mouse, or maybe we take the side of the cat. But however, from an higher order, it's harmony. There's a natural harmony to the whole event, depending on our perspective. If we are always engaged in judgment, we are always in disorder. Always. There are some levels of disorder. For example, if the way we think about the world, the way we feel, the way we act, if these things are different from each other, then we are in disorder. Maybe we think we understand Dzogchen. Maybe we think we understand the Buddhist teachings. We have trust in them. But the way we feel and the way we live our lives is not in accordance with the Buddhist teachings. Is not in accordance with Dzogchen. So we are in disorder. And disorder breeds anxiety. It breeds tension. And tension breeds all kinds of problems. You see, sanity always comes from order. Problems always come from disorder. So to understand in our lives the meaning of order and disorder is very important. The first level of order and disorder comes exactly as I started the teaching today. Do I do it, or does it do we do it, or does it do me? That's the first level of disorder. Because we have the feeling we do it. That's disorder, because it's not in accordance to reality. So while we hold this belief, that's the first level of disorder right there. Then there are many other levels of disorder. The one I just said, like when our feelings, our thoughts, our experience, our beliefs are not really, our experience are not really in accordance with each other. That's disorder. This happens a lot. People have one set of values and beliefs, but then they have different kind of impulses, and the way they actually live their lives practically is completely different. Then we find some very strong cases of very strong disorder. I'm living my life in a way that is completely different than what I believe is the right way. This is no joke. This is a very serious problem. This is very much at the root of disorder, inner disorder and outer disorder, actually. Another form of disorder is intellectually, is understanding something or thinking I understand something, that I know something, and taking that understanding as something important, when my experience is actually different. That's another level of disorder that causes a lot of problems. Order is when our view, our understanding, our experience, our actions, our speech, they are in harmony with each other. This is order. And in this condition of order, that is just what is. You see, because there's no other possibility. Because if we are not just abiding as what is, we are always in disorder. Always. Because there's always a difference, you see. Always a difference. Because whatever it is that we believe or that we think or we judge about right and wrong, it never corresponds to what is. It never does. We can feel very self-righteous about ourselves. About, yes, but this is right and this is wrong. Sure, from your point of view. And the point of view is always limited, is always narrow, is always subjective. When we move away from all points of views into just the natural as it is, the higher order, if you want to put it like that, then it's just what is. There is no tragedy, there is no drama, there is no play. There is just infinity, presence, unity, beauty. Samsara is an illusion. I don't want to be. I don't want to sound like I'm doing some kind of political speech. The reason I'm speaking like this is not like that. It's just because we need to correct some things in order to really approach our practice of contemplation and the understanding of Dzogchen and Buddhism, actually, in a more profound way. The reason why I'm saying this is because, you see, all this kind of approach of development. Oh, samsara. Yes, samsara is terrible, and samsara is this, and samsara is that. And I mean, I've given a lot of teachings like that myself, okay? So, and sometimes we need to. But we need to understand that such teachings, they are provisional. They are provisional teachings. They are just skillful means to help us turn our heads from one direction to another. That's all they are. All that kind of teachings of samsara, cause and effect, all these teachings, they are provisional. They are to help us break free from delusion, from gross delusion, from extremely gross delusion. And many of you have heard me talk, teach heavily about samsara and all that, for a long time. However, from the truth point of view, samsara is illusory, it doesn't exist. People take positions about samsara, you see. Some will say, we have to try to make it better. Yes, okay, it's samsara, I understand, but still we can do something to make samsara better. That's one kind of position. Other people will say, no. Samsara is samsara. But the Buddha said, and I myself said this sometimes, samsara is samsara. Samsara, the Buddha said, is suffering, is always suffering. So there's no, don't worry about it too much because, that's the nature of samsara, is suffering. So, there's nothing that can be done to fix it. That's another way to go about it. However, samsara doesn't exist. It's unreal. It's an illusion. Samsara is disorder. Samsara is you doing it. Samsara is you doing it. Samsara is disorder. Samsara is the nature of disorder. There is no samsara objectively anywhere. It does not exist. It's not a place, it's not here or there or today or tomorrow or yesterday. It's not a place that you can go or become free from. Just like nirvana is not a place you can go to. Samsara is disorder, nirvana is order. The moment you try to fix disorder, you make more disorder. The moment you try to make order, you make disorder. The moment you recognize disorder, you become order. This is Dzogchen teaching, just using disorder and order instead of ignorance and awareness. Maybe you understood that already. You're just approaching it from a different angle. Because disorder is ignorance. It's this dualistic, fixated, judgmental way of looking at reality. And order is awareness. Because awareness is just here. Knowing without judgment. Fully lucid and present. And that's order. That's sanity. That is healing. We get very easily focused on our problems and the problems of the world. And the more focused we become, the bigger they become. Because the world is made in our minds, and by our minds. So now that leads us to the other point of the title of the teaching for today, contemplation. So what is the connection between all these things that I spoke about today? Does it do you or does it do me? Order and disorder. What is the common thread that crosses all these things? Or cause and effect, or the illusion, the illusory nature of cause and effect, and so forth. So what is the common thread that crosses all this? Contemplation. Contemplation. It is the state of contemplation itself. Contemplation, it is the ultimate nature itself already. If our contemplation is authentic. If our contemplation is not yet really authentic, if it's really not pure, if it's still very much involved with distraction, fixation, and things like that, or if it's still more kind of mindfulness, then it's not yet completely. Then we speak about more like the path. It's like the path. But whatever it is this contemplation, or this attempt at contemplation, at just staying. Just staying. I mean, not even stay here or now, just stay. Like I said before, just stay. Open, lucid, present, aware. You notice that when I say this, and I've been using this approach for a couple of years now, to introduce contemplation, I always say it like this: just stay. Open, clear, spacious, lucid, present, aware. You notice all these words, there's no verb in there. I'm not sure if you ever noticed. There's no verb in there. I never use a verb. I never say do that or be aware. Open, spacious, clear, lucid, present, aware. There's no verbs in here. There's no doing here. Contemplation is not something you do. It's something you recognize because it is already here. It is a natural condition of mind itself. It is the background. It is the background. It is the silence behind the music. It is the order behind the disorder. It is the world doing you instead of you doing it. everything, all these points get resolved in this. Just this. Open, lucid, clear, spacious, present, aware. That's all. This is Dzogchen. Just this. Really, that's it. This is Dzogchen. There's nothing. Everything else is to further elaborate, to help the mind understand this. As an example that I use sometimes. Sometimes people, like even recently, somebody was asking me some questions. Some person that has read some books and listened to some teachings here and there and has tried to look at their mind, but with very little experience and very little kind of knowledge of the path. And I could understand that this person had kind of natural talent, let's put it like that, for the spiritual path. And I could understand that this person could very quickly come to understand. But I also saw that this person had no background, no knowledge, no experience. And I was asking me a lot of questions, and I deliberately avoided or kind of maneuvered and kept things very simple. And this person at some point says, but I understand that already, but more, how do I go more? And I said, no, but then you have to study. You have to study. You have to study and learn, get teachings. But this seems contradictory, So if it's just this, why do you need to learn, to study and all that? To study, to get the teachings on the tantras and the Dzogchen teachings and all these things. And it's very simple, really. It's a matter of pointing out, of having a common language to be able to come to this understanding. Because for all of you here, when I speak like this, we have enough, we have a common vocabulary, we have a common ground, we have a common dictionary, symbolic dictionary, that I can speak like this, and I know that more or less, greater extent, lesser extent, all of you here will understand what I'm trying to explain. But if we don't have this common language, then it's not possible to speak like this. It's like trying to show a path to someone, show a path to someone. And you say, you go up that road until the pine tree. Once you reach the pine tree, you'll see on your left side there's an oak tree, and then you turn left. But if the person doesn't know what is a pine tree or is an oak tree, it doesn't really matter what is a pine tree or an oak tree, but it serves this function. So if we don't have this relative way of communicating to each other, if you don't know what is a pine tree or an oak tree, then it's very difficult for anyone to point the way in a relative sense. So when I use these teachings like I did today, when I speak like this, open, clear, present, lucid, most of you, depending on your own level of experience and capacity, but most of you understand what I mean. If you have no background, no experience, no knowledge, if you never received teachings on Dzogchen, never received teachings on the root tantras and all that, then the meaning of these words won't be correct. You won't be what I mean. You see, when I say aware, for example, when I use the word aware, I mean something very specific. And most of you here now know what I mean, more or less. It's enough, good enough, I would say. However, for someone that has never been exposed to Dzogchen teachings at all, never received teachings, then the understanding of aware is probably very far from what I mean with aware. It will be the common understanding of aware, of mental consciousness, being conscious of something, which is not the awareness I mean. So, I was saying this because when I say that this is Dzogchen, just this, nothing else. But then why all that other stuff? Why all these, 18 root tantras of Sende and, the root tantras of Longde and the 17 root tantras of Upadesha, and why, and all these commentaries, and why all these teachings from these different masters, and why all these things? Why? Because of this. Because of this. Because we are needing to approach it, to define is not the right word. We need to refine, to learn how to recognize the background from the foreground. It is just different ways to come to understand, to recognize in our own mind what is the background. What is the difference between the background and the foreground? How, in the end, the foreground and the background are actually inseparable. And why does it even matter, any of this? Why is any of this even important? So that's why there's all these other teachings. But the real, just essence, what Dzogchen is just that. Just stay open, clear, lucid, present, aware. That's it. And try to be like that all the time. And once you become like this all the time, then you go beyond disorder. You go into order. You go into sanity. You move into a space of sanity. You move into a space beyond time, beyond yesterday, now, tomorrow, beyond fixation, beyond judgment. And that's healing. That's real healing. That's healing at the most fundamental level. That is the total recognition that there is no samsara, there is no nirvana. All that is just fairy tales. There is no such things. You see, just to close the teaching today, and I think I made that statement some time ago, even though I mostly do it anyway, but that more and more I feel what is most important to really express and teach is this pure view of Dzogchen. Because in the Buddhist world in particular Tibetan Buddhism, I would say, it has drifted very far from this essence and is drifting further and further away. It is okay to teach relative teachings, causal teachings about samsara and the Four Noble Truths. It's perfectly valid. The Buddha started to teach like that. Because in the beginning, we have to explain what is a pine tree. We have to explain what is an oak tree, So in the beginning, to introduce this kind of gradual teachings, it has its function. It's necessary. If it wasn't necessary, the Buddha would not have done it. But I have a feeling today that most Buddhist teachings never go beyond that. It's stuck there. Like the record is stuck in the same place. Never moves forward. And this is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's not just problematic, but it's actually dangerous. Because it's turning the teachings into something real. It is turning all these things into something real. Maybe we start to believe that samsara is real, that nirvana is real, that the Buddha is real, that the Buddhahood is something real, different than what this is here. And this is not Buddhism. No, this is not Buddhism. If you have to develop something, and the Buddha himself said, the Buddha nature is what is. Enlightenment is when you recognize what is, when the illusion of obscuration is removed. You cannot get there by doing something. Forget Dzogchen, just normal, just basic Buddhism. Okay, basic Buddhism. We need to be free, We need to relax and be free. In today's world, which is super busy, especially in our society, in our modern society, which is super busy, super stressed, super neurotic, super complicated, full of constructions of all levels, full of stimuli. The average Western person is subject to stupid amounts of stimulation from all sides, all the time, continuously. They have their minds super stimulated. If there was ever a time in history where the pure teachings of Dzogchen are necessary, is now, is now. To diffuse, to open up all this tension, all this contrived way of being, of approaching spirituality, in a way that is just fantasy, childish teachings. In the old days in the Catholic Church, they used to teach children and people about hell and all these things, and if you don't behave, you go to hell, and it's just like that. That's the way Buddhism is being taught. It's the same way, You moved from Christianity to Buddhism, but people are doing the same. It's doing the same. It's the same kind of childish, dualistic, spiritual teaching. From the point of view of Buddhism, I was going to say Dzogchen, but I don't want to say just Buddhism. From the point of view of Buddhism, this is not the case. There is no samsara. Samsara is the illusion. But the Buddha said this. Samsara is the illusion. And it's because we don't recognize the illusion that we suffer. And that is samsara. And yet we have objectified samsara as something real. As this is samsara. No, this is not samsara. This is what is. And once you recognize disorder, it becomes order, as I just said. The moment you recognize the illusion, it becomes freedom. It's really that simple. Don't overcomplicate things. There's no need for that. Open, lucid, aware, present. Silent. This is Dzogchen. It is just this natural opening of the view. Very spontaneous, very free, very clear. Without constructions, without fixations, without fantasies, without fears. There's so much fear sometimes. Oh, and if you do this wrong, and that's going to happen, and then you go to hell, and then there's Vajra hell. Oh my God, the Vajra hell, Free yourselves from all such nonsense. There's just this. It's always been just this. When you follow after your ego, when you follow after fixations, judgments, duality, you follow into disorder. And when you fall into disorder, you fall into suffering. And then you experience suffering state. If you come back to order, you experience non-duality, you experience the great perfection, the great totality of the ultimate space, and that is joy and wisdom and happiness. That's it. That's it. Of course, now we can make 100,000 theories and develop a religion and have different dress codes and different hats and all kinds of stuff and make a club and get a club card and sure, why not? We can also do that as long as we do it freely and openly. Why not? You know, no problem. It's all good. It's all good. Shamanta Badra. It's all good. With the right view, it's all good. It doesn't matter. Okay, any questions? Questions, please.